My name is Yaroslava Volkova, and at 30 years old, I never expected to uncover a family conspiracy that would change my life forever. When my parents-in-law suddenly announced they were going on holiday to the Maldives, leaving me to care for my supposedly mute and bedridden 9-year-old niece Lilia, I reluctantly agreed. They described her as a child with special needs from birth, silent, immobile, requiring constant care. Little did I know that minutes after they left, my world would be turned upside down. I have always been passionate about education. As an elementary school teacher, I have dedicated my life to helping children reach their potential. My classroom was my refuge, a place where I felt in control and respect. That feeling disappeared whenever I visited my husband's family. Yaroslav and I had been married for 3 years when this incident occurred. He was kind, smart, and loving, but he had one fatal flaw. He avoided conflict, especially with his family. While I adored my husband, his family was a different story. The Volkovs were old money. Rostislav Volkov, my father-in-law, was the epitome of a power broker. He made his fortune in real estate development and ruled his family with the same iron fist he used in the boardroom. Elena, my mother-in-law, was the perfect complement to her husband. Cold and calculating, she was obsessed with appearance and social status. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair never moved, like her frozen expression. She had mastered the art of making caustic remarks under the guise of compliments. Then there was Angelina, Miroslava's older sister and Lily's mother. At 36, she had never had a real job, living off her passion fund and family connections. She had Lilia in her early 20s, to a man she barely knew who conveniently disappeared before the baby was born. Vsevolod, Miroslav's older brother, was a successful corporate lawyer who did his father's every bidding. And finally, my husband Miroslav, the youngest child, desperately seeking his family's approval while trying to keep the peace with me. From the moment I entered the Volkov family, I was treated as an outsider. My middle-class background and career in public education were viewed with barely concealed contempt. Every family gathering was an exercise in restraint. I bit my tongue to keep the peace for Miroslav, and there was Lilia, Angelina's daughter. According to her family, Lilia was born with a severe neurological disorder that left her unable to speak or move on her own. She required round-the-clock care, which Angelina mostly delegated to a rotating staff of nurses. I saw Lilia at family gatherings, always in her special wheelchair. She stared ahead, unmoved, never reacting to what was going on. I always thought there was something alive and intelligent in her eyes, but I pushed those thoughts away. It all started with a call from Elena 3 days before their departure. She didn't call to ask, but to tell me that I would be staying in their mansion to look after Lilia while the whole family, including Angelina, enjoyed a 2-week vacation in the Maldives. "Yaroslava, dear, we need you to look after Lilia while we're gone," she announced in a tone that brooked no argument. "What about her regular nurses?" I asked, already knowing I was being manipulated. "Oh, and we had to fire them, they're so unreliable. Besides, the family should take care of the family." Miroslav already agreed. Of course, he agreed without consulting me. When I told Miroslav everything, he put on his best guilty look. "Honey, they really need our help. It's only for 2 weeks." "What about my job? I can't just abandon my students." Next week is spring break, and the second week, Mom said Dad would call the head of the education department. You know, he's a big donor to the school district, and that's the Volkov method. The rules didn't apply to them. I reluctantly agreed. The day before they left, we moved into the Volkovs' huge mansion, and Angelina gave me a crash course in caring for Lilia. She needs medication 3 times a day. "It's all written down. Don't miss a dose or she'll get difficult," she explained, barely looking at her daughter. The family's departure the next morning was a whirlwind of bustle. And not once did anyone, not even Angelina, stop to say a proper goodbye to Lilia. As the cars drove away, Miroslav hugged me. "Sorry, honey. Dad insisted I go to business meetings. You can handle it, right?" I nodded, feeling abandoned and hurt as I watched my husband leave with his family, leaving me alone with a child I barely knew how to care for. Left alone, I took Lilia to the huge living room and, as instructed, sat her in front of the television, turning on a children's program. I spoke quietly to her, explaining what I was doing, although I did not expect an answer. "I'm going to make us dinner, Lilia. I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything." It felt silly to talk to her as if she understood everything, but it felt wrong to treat her like a piece of furniture. The detailed care instructions said it was almost time for her evening medication, so I headed to the kitchen to prepare her prescribed liquid diet and the scattering of pills she was supposed to take. The Volkov's kitchen was a chef's dream, all stainless steel and marble, with top-notch appliances that were probably rarely used, since the house had a full-time chef who was also conveniently on vacation. I busied myself with making a simple pasta dish for myself and a special nutritional shake for Lily. As I stirred the sauce, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. A tingling sensation ran down my spine, and I turned around, expecting to see one of the servants. What I saw instead made me almost drop my wooden spoon. Lilia was standing in the doorway. Not in her wheelchair, but standing on her own 2 feet. Her posture was a little unsteady, but she held herself upright, leaning her hand on the door frame. Lilia whispered, not believing her eyes. Then she spoke, her voice soft but clear, with the slight lisp of a normal 9-year-old. "They want my 360 million. Please help me." The room seemed to be floating around me. I grabbed the countertop to steady myself, certain I was hallucinating. A supposedly mute, paralyzed girl had just walked into the kitchen and uttered a perfectly coherent sentence. "Lilia," I repeated, my voice barely audible. "Can you talk and walk?" She nodded, her eyes, those same intelligent eyes I had noticed before, now full of fear and hope. "Please don't tell them I spoke to you." "They're going to hurt me again." I left the stove and slowly approached her, kneeling down to be on the same level but keeping my distance so as not to scare her. "Lilia, I don't understand. Who's going to hurt you? What 360 million? Her little face contorted with worry. "My mom and grandpa and grandma. They're pretending I'm sick so they can take my money when I turn 18. My mind raced to process this revelation. How was this possible? An entire family pretending that a child was disabled. It seemed too monstrous to be true. Over the next hour, while the pasta sauce burned, Lilia told me her story. Her maternal grandparents, the Belyaevs whom the Volkovs despised, left Lilia a 360 million ruble trust fund after they died in a car crash when she was 3. The money was to be kept in trust until she turned 18, with her mother, Angelina, as trustee. "My mother started giving me medication after my grandparents died," Lilia explained. "They make me feel sleepy and weak. When I tried not to drink them, she would pinch me really hard or lock me in a dark closet." Tears streamed down her face as she continued. "They told everyone I was born sick, but that's not true. I remember running, playing, and talking before the medication started. I felt sick when Lilia described how she was forced to pretend she couldn't speak or move when anyone was around. How she was threatened and punished if she showed any signs of normalcy. How the family discussed their plans to declare her mentally incompetent when she turned 18 so they could spend her inheritance with no control. How do you know about the money?" I asked, struggling to process all this. A look of pride crossed Lily's face. "I taught myself to read when no one was looking. Mom leaves papers, and I look at them when she's not there. I have a diary where I write everything down." She led me into her room, a sterile, hospital-like space that broke my heart. From under the mattress, she pulled out a small notebook and some folded documents that she had obviously stolen from Angelina's office. The diary was filled with the neat handwriting of a child who had taught himself to read in secret. The entries documented the family's conversations about her money, the medications she was forced to take, and the threats used to keep her silent. Among the documents were a copy of the trust fund agreement, bank statements showing a hefty balance, and most disturbingly, drafts of the psychiatric evaluation that would declare Lilia incompetent. I sat on the edge of her bed, papers spread around me, feeling a mixture of horror, disbelief, and mounting rage. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Why did you take such a risk?" Lily's eyes filled with tears again. "Because you're kind and you talk to me like I'm real and—" She trailed off. "They never left me with just one person, always nurses who believed in them. I was hoping maybe you could help me." In that moment, looking at this brave little girl who had endured years of abuse and isolation for money, I made a decision that would change our lives forever. "I'll help you, Lilia," I promised. "You're not alone anymore." The next morning, I faced a crucial choice, whether to give Lilia her medicine as instructed or to believe her story and not do it. The possible consequences weighed on me. If she really needed these drugs, I could harm her health. But if her story was true, and my gut instinct told me it was, then I would be complicit in her suffering. I decided to trust my instincts. I pretended to prepare her morning dose, but instead dumped it all in the sink. I gave her the nutritional shake without the crushed pills, watching her anxiously. By midday, the transformation was astounding. Lilia became more lively. Her movements were more coordinated. Her speech, which had been somewhat slurred the night before, became clearer and more animated. She seemed like a perfectly normal 9-year-old, albeit one cut off from the usual joys of childhood. "I feel better when I'm not taking medication," she admitted, her eyes shining brighter than I'd ever seen them. The head is not so foggy. Together we began a methodical search of the house for evidence. Lilia knew the mansion well, having spent countless hours watching everything from her wheelchair, while everyone thought she noticed nothing. "Mom keeps important papers in her office," Lilia directed me. "The key is under the flower pot." Angelina's office was evidence of her superficial nature. Everything about it screamed style, but not substance. The cabinet with the documents that Lilia had pointed out was locked, but the key was indeed there. Inside, I found a veritable treasure trove of evidence. The financial documents detailed a trust from the Belyaevs, Lily's maternal grandparents, who had indeed left her 360 million rubles. I also found legal correspondence about the terms of the trust, nomming Angelina as trustee until Lily turned 18 or was deemed mentally competent to manage her own affairs. Most disturbing was a folder labeled Lily's estate. Inside were medical records that were clearly falsified. Prescriptions for powerful sedatives and muscle relaxants, drugs that could actually make an active child look limp and motionless. "Look," Lily pointed to the document I had missed. There was her original birth certificate and early pediatric reports. They showed a perfectly healthy child with normal developmental milestones until age 3. Then, suddenly, the reports changed dramatically, documenting a rapid regression that coincided precisely with the death of her maternal grandparents. My blood ran cold when Lilia led me into her bedroom and pointed out the almost invisible little devices in the upper corners. They sometimes watch me to make sure I'm behaving well. I recognized them immediately. They were surveillance cameras. The family watched the child like a prisoner. Lilia shared horrific details of her life, how Angelina pinched her or twisted her arm if she showed signs of awareness, how Rostislav entered her room late at night and reminded her in rude terms what would happen to her if she ever revealed their secret, how Alina put her on display at charity events as a special burden on the family to elicit sympathy and donations. My phone rang, interrupting our investigation. It was Alina. I put on a mask of politeness, assuring her that everything was fine, while Lilia sat silently next to me, her eyes wide with fear. "Remember, Yaroslava, consistency is the key to caring for Lilia," Alina reminded me. Of course, I answered, my free hand clenching into a fist. Everything is going exactly according to schedule. After the call, we continued searching Angelina's computer, the password to which Lilia knew. "Always her birthday," she explained. We found emails between family members discussing the trust fund, complaints about the burden of maintaining Lily's supposed fortune, and most damningly, plans to have her declared legally incompetent when she turned 18. One letter from Rostislav to Angelina made me shudder. "The amendments to the trust are moving forward. Judge Voronin owes me." Once the documents are drawn up, even if the girl somehow manages to convince someone of her legal capacity, the money will remain under the control of the family, until then supporting the current protocols. Behind an expensive painting in Angelina's bedroom, we found a wall safe. Lilia didn't know the combination, but I had a guess. I tried Angelina's birthday. Nothing. Then I entered Lily's date of birth, and the safe opened. Inside were more financial documents, jewelry, and a USB drive. When we hooked it up to the computer, we found a video of Lily as a baby. She was running, laughing, and talking. It was irrefutable proof that she had been developing normally until her grandparents died. By the evening, I had collected irrefutable evidence of the Volkov family's complex scheme. But I was still missing one important detail. 360 million rubles is certainly a lot of money. But the Volkovs were already well off. Why go to such extremes? The answer came when Lilia showed me a secret compartment in her wheelchair where she hid various papers. Among them was a letter from her maternal grandfather, addressed to Lilia, to be given to her on her 18th birthday. It had been mistakenly given to Angelina. The letter revealed that the 360 million was just the beginning. The Belyaevs were successful oil investors who had sold their company for a fortune. The bulk of their inheritance, nearly 4.5 billion rubles, was kept in a separate trust that would go to Lilia when she turned 25, but only if she was declared competent and controlled the original trust. The Volkovs weren't just after 360 million. They were playing the long game for a fortune 10 times that amount. That night, as I put Lilia to bed in the guest room, away from the security cameras, I felt a fierce determination well up inside me. The next morning, Lilia and I sat at the kitchen table, planning our next steps. "If you could have anything, Lilia, what would you want?" I asked softly. Her answer was immediate and heartbreaking in its simplicity. "I want to go to a real school. I want friends. I want to not be afraid anymore. And I want my mother to love me for real, not pretend to love me in front of people." The sincerity in her voice almost broke me. Despite everything, she still longed for their love. I knew we needed professional help. I went out onto the terrace to make a personal call to my best friend, Larissa Orlova. Larissa was a family lawyer specializing in protecting children's rights. "Oh my God, Yaja," Larissa breathed out after listening to me. "If what you're saying is true, this is one of the most horrific cases of child abuse and financial exploitation I've ever heard. You need to document everything. But be careful, these people are dangerous." After talking with Larissa, I returned to Leela. "Will you send me back to them?" she asked quietly. "No way," I knelt down next to her. "We'll make sure you're safe." Over the next few days, we established a routine. During the day, we collected and preserved evidence. I photographed documents, copied files to a secure cloud storage service Larissa had created, and helped Lilia document her experiences in a diary. In the evening, the family called, and I supported the deception, telling them everything was going according to plan. Meanwhile, Lilia continued to blossom without sedatives. She was funny, inquisitive, and surprisingly resilient. The question of whether to tell Miroslav weighed heavily on me. He was my husband, but his blind devotion to his family made me doubt. 5 days later, I decided to check him out. I called Miroslav while Lilia was sleeping. "Hi, how are the Maldives?" "Amazing, how is Lily?" I took a deep breath. Actually, I noticed some oddities. "Her medication regimen seems excessive, and I found documents about her trust fund that are disturbing." There was a pause, and then Miroslav's voice became noticeably colder. "And Asia, you know nothing about Lily's condition. The medication is necessary, and her financial affairs are none of your business. And Miroslav, don't you think so? Look, Angelina knows what's best for her daughter. Just follow the instructions and stop digging through the family papers." This was completely inappropriate. His dismissive response confirmed my worst fears. Was Miroslav an active accomplice or simply willfully ignorant? He could not be trusted. "You're right, I lied. I'm sorry." After hanging up, I sat in silence, my resolve growing stronger. I was alone in this battle. Me and a 9-year-old girl against a powerful and wealthy family. I dedicated the rest of the week to helping Lily get over what she had been deprived of. We baked cookies, played board games, and watched age-appropriate movies. I had never been played with before, she admitted. The night before the family returned, Lilia and I finished our cooking. The evidence was overwhelming. What if they don't believe us? She asked. That won't happen, I squeezed her hand. Too many people know the truth now. You're not alone anymore. Tomorrow will be hard, I warned as I put her to bed. But remember how brave you've been all these years. Just a little more and you'll be free. She hugged me. Thank you for believing me, she whispered. I always promised. Little did I know that tomorrow would come much sooner than expected. At 3 a.m, I was awakened by the sound of the front door opening and voices in the hall. The family wasn't due back until noon, but here they were, in the middle of the night, taking us by surprise. I rushed to Lily's room and found her wide-eyed and wide awake. They came back early, she whispered, shaking. I quickly helped her back to her formal bedroom with the surveillance equipment. Remember our plan, I whispered. No matter what happens, I won't let them hurt you again. Before I could put her to bed, Angelina appeared at the door. What are you doing here? She demanded. I heard a noise and came to check on Lilia, I improvised. You're early. Daddy's business finished early, she replied, narrowing her eyes suspiciously. Everything went according to schedule? Of course, I lied smoothly. Exactly as you ordered. The entire Volkov clan was gathered in the living room. Yaroslava coldly acknowledged my presence, Rostislav. I hope everything was satisfactory. Yes, I answered simply. Elena studied me with a calculating look. Curiously, Angelina checked the supply of medicine before leaving. It seems that a few doses are missing. My heart began to pound, but I kept a neutral expression. At that moment, a sound broke the silence, causing everyone to freeze. Footsteps on the stairs. All heads turned as Lily appeared in the doorway, standing upright, fully dressed and completely alert. Hello, Mommy, she said clearly. Hello, Grandma and Grandpa. I feel much better now. The room exploded into chaos. Angelina let out a strangled scream. Rastislav turned purple and turned to me. What have you done? He thundered. I quickly stood between him and Lilia. I didn't do anything except stop drugging an innocent child. Angelina grabbed Lilia's hand roughly. She needs medicine. She's having some kind of fit. No, Lilia screamed, breaking free with a force that surprised everyone. I won't drink this anymore. I know what you're doing. I know about my money. It's all a lie, Angelina shrieked. My daughter is gravely ill and delirious. She is not ill and delirious, I countered. She has been faking it for years because you threatened her. I know everything. About the trust fund, about the drugs, about the observation. Everything. Rastislav stepped forward. You have no idea what you're talking about. I can destroy you, your career, your reputation. One call and you'll never teach again. Miroslav finally spoke up. Yasia, maybe Mom is right. Let's go home and talk. There's nothing to talk about, Miroslav. Your family has been abusing Lilia for years, and I will not leave and let it continue. Angelina lunged at Lilia again, this time with a bottle of pills. You will take your medicine right now. I intercepted her, pushing her away from Lily. Don't you dare touch her. Rastislav grabbed my arm painfully. This is an attack, Vsevolod. Call the police, we will arrest her. I wouldn't do that if I were you, I said calmly, taking out my phone. Because the police and child protection services had already been notified. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. You're bluffing, Rastislav said, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. True, I showed him the call history. My friend Larissa Orlova. You may have heard of her. One of the best family lawyers in the country. She documented everything we found. Before he could answer, the doorbell rang. Vsevolod looked out the window and cursed. There's a police car at the gate. When Rastislav opened the door, it wasn't just the police standing there. Larissa was with them, as was a woman I recognized as a child welfare worker. Mr. Volkov, Larissa greeted him professionally. I suppose you were expecting us. Rastislav tried to take control of the situation. There was a misunderstanding. My daughter-in-law is interfering with my granddaughter's treatment. The evidence suggests otherwise, Mr. Volkov, Larissa interrupted. We have reason to believe that Lily Volkova has been subjected to long-term medical abuse and financial exploitation. At that moment, Chaos Miroslav came up to me, finally coming out of his stupor. He looked at Lilia. Lilia, he said softly, kneeling down. Can you tell me the truth? Did my family hurt you? Lilia looked at him with tired eyes, then at me. I nodded encouragingly. They make me take drugs that make me sick, she said clearly. They say that if I talk or move around when people are around, they will send me away forever. They want my money from the other grandparents. Miroslav's face twisted. He turned to his family. Is that true? You abused this child for money? Rostislav tried to change tactics, turning to the officers. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. I'm sure we can come to an agreement. The implication was clear. He was offering a bribe. Child abuse is not a family matter, the officer replied coldly. It is a criminal offense. And then Angelina, seeing no way out, broke down. It was Dad's idea, she cried, pointing at Rostislav. He said that Lily's inheritance would solve all our problems. The company was on the verge of collapse. We needed capital. He said that no one would question Lily if she had special needs. Angelina, shut up, Rostislav roared, but it was too late. The next few hours passed in a blur. Lilia was taken to the hospital for examination. Rostislav and Angelina were taken to the police station for questioning. The Volkov family's carefully constructed facade crumbled overnight. Outside the hospital, doctors confirmed what we already knew. Lilia was physically and neurologically normal for her age. 3 months later, I sat in a sunlit courtroom, watching the judge grant us temporary custody of Lilia. Rostislav and Angelina were charged with multiple offenses. Leonora escaped prosecution, but her reputation was destroyed. Miroslav and I began intensive therapy, and he, having severed financial ties with his family, was determined to start over. But the most amazing thing was Lily's transformation. Free of medication and fear, she blossomed. She went to school, made friends. One evening, as we sat on the porch of our new modest home, she asked if she could call us Mom and Dad. And in that moment, I realized that we had not just won the battle for her future. We found the family she deserved.